Well, hello and welcome to our webinar on time-saving tips and tricks in ClearCalcs. We will get started in another few minutes after we wait for a few more people to join the webinar. For those of you who have been with ClearCalcs for some time, you may recognize some of the material that we go through today in our tips and tricks. This webinar in particular will be aimed a little more at assuming that you roughly know how to use the ClearCalcs platform already. We'll be giving you quick tips and tricks on how to use it in a more advanced and more time-saving fashion. If you are a complete new user to ClearCalcs, we do have a webinar that we gave about 2 months ago, that I gave about 2 months ago. Our team will be posting the link to that in the chat on here, and you can watch the recording for that as well. But we will go over some new material in here, and you'll recognize some of it from that previous webinar as well.
I just put the link to the webinar recording in the chat if anyone wants to view.
Thank you, Addie. While we're waiting, if any of you would like to post in the chat your name and how long you've been using ClearCalcs for, that can help give us some guidance as I run this webinar and talk a bit more to the level of those of you who are on here. So feel free to use the chat. Let us know your name and how long you've been using ClearCalcs for.
Well, if you are new to ClearCalcs, we'd love to know what you do as well, which company or industry where you're from, and which city you're tuning in from.
Good morning, Sebastian. Hope you get some good value out of this webinar. We'll give it just another minute for people to continue to join the webinar. It looks like we still got a few more coming on. We'll get started in just another minute or so. Hi, Paul. Yep, I've been with ClearCalcs now almost 4 years. So yeah, I think you probably joined near to when I first joined the company. All right. Well, it looks like we have we're getting a bit stable with the number of attendees, so I'll get started. So today's webinar is going to be talking about time-saving tips and tricks with ClearCalcs. As I mentioned earlier, this webinar will be aimed a little more at people who already know how to roughly use the ClearCalcs platform. In the chat, you can find a link to a previous webinar that I gave on how to go through an entire workflow of building a house using the ClearCalcs platform. Those of you who are new to ClearCalcs may find that webinar particularly helpful as well, but I think you'll still get value out of this one. So we welcome all of you, and I'll get started. So first, a little bit about ClearCalcs for those of you who are new. We are a cloud-based platform based upon the finite elements analysis method. All of our calculators have FEA built in. We allow you to design concrete, steel, cold form steel, or timber, and we're available everywhere. So that means that whether you're working from the office, from home, or even doing a site inspection, anywhere you have a mobile phone signal, you can use the ClearCalcs platform. So what sets us apart? We give you live solutions, showing you every change you make, the effects of it instantly. We're based on finite element analysis. So that means, unlike some other programs, we are using the exact locations you put in for every support, the exact locations for every point load, and giving you precise results for everything. One perhaps early tip and trick here is you can use us for as simple or as complex a calculation as you want. And when you first create a calculator, we try to make it default to reasonable conservative values right off the bat. So you'll probably always need to change the member type and the span length of your member, but most of the other inputs can probably be left as is, and it may not be a fully fine-tuned design, but it will be reasonable. On our platform, we provide clean, clear printouts, and you can see the full detail for every field. If you click on the name of any field in our platform, you'll be able to see the references for it, often a description, and any equations used for any calculations involved. We also provide rapid product updates, so you can get an update for every calculation we improve, for every feature we add, within days, not years. You never have to wait for another release to download. So a bit about me. My name is Brooke Smith. I'm the head of engineering R&D here at ClearCalcs. I'm a chartered professional engineer in Australia and a licensed professional engineer in the United States. I grew up in the United States originally. So I have a master's degree from UMass and a bachelor's from Dartmouth College there. Prior to joining ClearCalcs, I have had about 8 years of experience doing structural R&D consulting, specializing in cold form steel. It's my favorite material. I love cold form steel. Had a research fellowship in system behavior of thin walled steel. And I was a forensic structural engineer where I specialized in reinforced and post-tension concrete, doing some fun projects with the Empire State Building and others. So I've just passed 4 years now working at ClearCalcs, and I'm now the head of R&D here. So how to ask questions? We do invite you to ask questions at any time during the webinar. However, we will only be answering them in the second half once we complete the initial presentation here. So feel free to ask at any time, but I will only be answering them once we finish the webinar in about half an hour, 25 minutes or so. Suggest that you use the questions view in GoToWebinar here to ask questions. That makes it easiest for us to keep track of what we have and have not answered. So today's topics, we're going to go through just kind of a bunch of tips and tricks within the platform. This is a bit of a load of bullet points that you're viewing here, but these are just a bunch of fun ways that we think you can make the most use out of ClearCalcs and get the most value out of your subscription with us. So we'll go through project details, defaults, dealing with win loads, preferred sections, grouping calculations, calculation upgrades and how those are handled within the platform, linking loads, changing materials, making the most use of user formulas and unit conversion, and finally transferring your data out to submittal documents. So first, project details. Everything in project details when you first open a project is optional. The only thing that is not, and going back a little on what I just said, the only thing that's not optional is the building standard. So most of you listening to this webinar are going to be using the Australian building standard for almost everything you do. But as you know, the National Construction Code here allows for performance-based design as well. If an Australian standard isn't working for you, or you're looking for a European section that we don't have in our Australian database, but do in our European database, for example, you can do a performance-based design. One way to do that is to simply use another country's standard. And as long as it's a reputable standard, that usually is pretty easy to pass as a performance-based design. So you could change the building standard for your entire project, or no matter what you select your building standard as, when you go to add a new calculation, you can select any of the other countries that we provide calculations for. New Zealand, United States, Canada, or we're slowly building out our Eurocode calculations now as well. Project defaults. We know this is one area that we can get some questions on. Project defaults is just setting initial values that are automatically applied in relevant presets. So when you select that you want a timber rafter or a timber floor joist, that's what we call a preset. We'll automatically apply values that you set in project defaults as appropriate, depending on what preset that you've selected there. These values will also automatically be updated if you change something in project defaults. So if you change your rafter spacing, for example, and you already created a rafter calculation, that's going to update the rafter spacing in the calculation you already created as well. So it not just for new calculators, but will affect ones that you have already created as well. The main goal of this is really just to make your life easier so that you don't have to re-enter the same numbers all the time. If you are designing a single-story house, for example, we don't want you to have to re-enter that your stud height is 2.3 meters in 20 different calculators. We want you to only have to enter it once in our project default sheet, and then that'll just propagate through your entire project, and you won't need to keep re-entering it. You can use these project defaults in any calculation as well. We'll talk about user formulas a bit later, but you can use the user formula, project default, quote, formula reference. So if I open up, say, railing height from the project defaults here, I can see the formula reference is h_railing. I can use that in any calculator within the project. This is specific to a project. You can't read it from another project, but within that project, you could type the formula project default, parenthesis, h_railing, and that will pull that value that you set in your project defaults. So how are some of these used around the platform? Rafter and joist spacing will be applied to the default load widths for a rafter or a joist, or the default lateral restraint spacing for a bearer. Bearing length will be applied as the default bearing length in all of the beams that you create. Headroom, that will apply to every stud you create. Height above window is the load width, that is the default load width for a lintel. A particular note here, if you're working in Queensland, particularly coastal Queensland, you probably need to set the K6 factor for timber to 0.9. You can set that only once in the project defaults here, and that will propagate through every timber calculator that you create. So you don't need to reset that in every single calculator you do. We also let you set some default loads in project defaults. So these will get set and depending upon the preset that you select. So roof, floor, or wall, default loads being set in here. You can set them either via the drop downs. So for example, I've got a screenshot here of default floor loads. I could select that I want the standard AS 1720.3 timber construction load for my permanent load. Or if I know that I want a 0.4 kPa permanent load, I can just straight type that into the table here as well. Either option will work. It will get propagated through and all of your calculations based on project defaults here. A particular note I'd make is I know some people prefer to use different serviceability load combinations. If you have special combinations that you want to check, if you want to check applying a 1 kilonewton load in the center of your beams, you could set a different serviceability load combination here and be able to enter that in whatever load type you'd like, whatever combinations you'd like, and this will be set in every calculator that you make use of. So by default, we'll use the AS 1170.0 commentary load combinations for serviceability, but you can edit these. You can do whatever you want. Use any load combination you want for your serviceability load combos. Now, wind loads, we give you a couple of options in ClearCalcs. So you can set the AS4055 class in project defaults if you know it right off the bat. Some of you are designing in one area constantly. That's just always going to be the same wind class. You can just set that in project defaults, and that will be set throughout your project. But if you want to do a more accurate calculation, you can also use our 1170.2 calculator, which will be updated shortly to the newest version, newest revision of 1170.2. We know it's been updated recently. A particular power-up I'd note, though, is our 1170.2 calculator can be used to figure out a more accurate AS4055 wind class. So in our 1170.2 calculator, one of the summary outputs is AS4055 wind class equivalent. So that'll tell you that maybe your design is equivalent to an N2 class. You can take that from our 1170.2 calculator. It's a more precise calculation, but apply it in project defaults and have that as an easier way to enter your wind loads. Next, preferred sections. The most useful thing these do is we have a one-click auto size feature. So we allow you in most of our calculators to click just this auto size button in your member selection, and that will, with just one click, automatically figure out the most structurally efficient section from among your preferred sections. So we aren't checking every single section in our database. Timber, for example, that's a few thousand sections. We can't quite go, we don't have quite the computing power to go through every single one of those, but we will go through your preferred sections and select the most structurally efficient section for that. And what does structurally efficient mean? That means it's a section closest to 100% utilization without exceeding 100%. As engineers or designers, you'll want to just keep an eye on that, make sure it actually selects something that you want. We know what is most structurally efficient. We don't actually know what is cheapest. So we might find that a small LVL is most structurally efficient, but you might prefer to use just a big F5 section because that might be notably cheaper. That's up to you. But do just keep an eye on what we actually select for auto size. We can only know what's most structurally efficient. We don't know the current market prices for sections that you may want to use. And a power up on here. I'll be noting power ups on many of these slides for just even more advanced tricks that you can make use of within our platform. So you can copy preferred sections from a previous project. Within ClearCalcs, we actually have some template projects that we create that we will copy preferred sections from just to test out different features. But you could do that as well in your organization. You could have a couple of template projects for, I don't know, a project that has a builder that prefers to use tilling timber or that prefers to use west beam or whatever. And you could make template projects like that that don't even have to be real projects. They could just be things that you copy your preferred sections from. Now, the other useful thing that preferred sections does is your preferred sections will be listed at the top of the member selector. So if that one-click auto size isn't working for you, you can instead open up our full member selector. You'll see those preferred sections with a little blue star next to them at the top of your screen on the member selector. In this, you could also filter down by manufacturer, by stress grade, depends on what material you're looking at as to what all the filter options are there. But you can filter that down. We'll also filter the preferred sections, so we'll only show you the preferred sections that meet these filters. Particular power up I'd note here, though, is that when you open up the member selector, we automatically focus your cursor on the type to filter box. So if you just click the member selector button to open up this screen, you could immediately start typing on your keyboard. So let's say if you know you want an E11.7 LBL, you could just click on the member selector, start typing on your keyboard E11.7, and that will very, very quickly filter you down to only showing the E11.7 sections in this member selector. We also allow you to group calculations within the ClearCalcs platform. So they're basically folders. So you can use these for whatever you want. We know some of our customers will group calculations based upon what floor on a multi-story building the calculator is relevant for. We have some customers who prefer to group all of their lintels together, all of their bearers together, all their studs together. How you group them is completely up to you. You can move calculations between those different groups as you wish. A power up here is you can also make some quick changes here as well. The member selector is available if you click on the little edit button that shows up when you mouse over any of the member names here. So that will open up the member selector. You can very quickly change a member selection from this screen. So that might come up if, say, you're reviewing a project at the end and you realize you designed only one member to use a particular size of beam. That's probably going to be a pain for the building contractor. They're probably going to prefer to just buy 10 of whatever beam size. You could change that right here. And maybe it's a less structurally efficient section, but it's going to be more convenient for your contractor. So you can change that quickly in the member selector right here. Now, if you've been with ClearCalcs for more than a couple months, you will probably have seen the calculation upgrades show up in your sidebar. That's this little yellow bar that shows up on the left side of your screen for a project that you open up. Every time you open a project, we'll check for whether the calculators within it have been upgraded by us. Now, upgrades could be anything. They could be adding a feature. They could be fixing a typo. They could be fixing another bug. They could be anything. If you click on the change log next to the upgrade reason, then you can see all the changes since your current version. So I clicked on the change log, for example, on first item in this calculation upgrades view. And that shows me that there's both a feature and a critical bug fix. And that'll give me a full description of what the changes actually are. You can look at these and decide whether or not they're actually relevant for you. If you don't care about a particular upgrade, you don't have to do it. We will always ensure that all of our old calculations will still function. So you'll still be able to view and edit them. We advise that you should upgrade them, but you don't have to. Old calculations will always still function on our platform. And you can untick any calculations that you do not want to upgrade. And you can always feel free to do that if you don't want to upgrade, say, to just an added feature that you don't care about. Once you do upgrade, we'll take you to the project details screen on your newly upgraded project. And there will be a couple of buttons on that. Compare results and revert upgrade. We encourage you to compare your results to make sure that changes are as you expect. Internally in ClearCalcs here, we write mappings in order to make sure that old inputs get placed correctly in the upgraded calculator. Usually it's just one-to-one, but occasionally we will make an additional change that will require something fancier in that upgrade mapping. If any unexpected changes happen, you can always safely revert here. Clicking on revert upgrade will take you back to the old version of your project. Internally, technically, we actually duplicate your project and then upgrade it. So we're just going back to the original version that you created. was actually never deleted internally in our database. So this is a very safe revert option. If something unexpected happens, let us know though too. Our customer support is run by our engineering team. So it's the same people who develop the calculators. If you spam us with a mistake that we made, we will get it fixed. We will make sure it is the same people who see these things. So we will make sure they get fixed if you ever run into any problems in the ClearCalcs platform, or if you just have a suggestion of something that we can do to make anything clearer or more straightforward within our platform. So linking loads, hopefully most of you have encountered this somewhere, but manually copy pasting numbers we know is a waste of time. Instead, you can click the chain icon next to the point loads or concentrated loads on any of our calculators in order to link to another calculator. And the results will automatically update here. So we keep track of those links. If you update, say add a new load to an upstream sheet, we'll automatically update your downstream sheets. So those will automatically reflect that higher load coming in as a reaction from that upstream sheet. So you can make long and complex chains of load linking. We'll keep track of all of that. We'll still automatically update everything. Now we also allow you to change materials almost instantly within our platform. So in the upper right of any calculator, there's this little change material icon. So we'll keep the same preset. So if you have a rafter, for example, and want to try a cold form steel beam instead, we'll keep that as a rafter preset in cold form steel. A particular power up you can use for this is if you want to give your client multiple options in multiple materials, you can do that by first duplicating your calculation and then changing material. So let's say you want to give an option of a large timber beam or a hot rolled steel beam that's notably smaller. You could give both of those options. Duplicate your timber beam, and then in that duplicated version, change material to steel. And that will reflect the same design, same support locations, same loads. It will also duplicate load links in. And that will reflect two options for your clients. Now, user formulas are one of the things that we are quite proud of within the ClearCalcs platform, though we know it's one of our more complex features. Similar to Excel, you can type formulas into any of our input boxes on ClearCalcs. So most of your favorite functions are already built in. So you could do cosine, square root. You can use standard notation for mathematics. So you can use caret for taking a power, star for multiplying, etc. We also have common constants that are already built in. So typing pi will give you 3.14159. E will give you the value for E. The word gravity will give you 9.8 meters per second squared. So if you want to convert from kilograms to kilonewtons, you can multiply in gravity there. And a particular power up here is we also do automatic unit conversion, and our entire platform is unit aware. So if some crazy American comes along and gives you imperial measurements for something, as long as you type in the unit, we can automatically convert that. So if you type in 4 feet divided by cosine of 30 degrees into an input, we'll automatically convert that to millimeters, recognize that, do that math for you. So you can type in formulas like this into any of our inputs. You can also cross-reference. So you can reference other inputs or other computed values within any of our sheets. So we try to be consistent with variable names between calculators. It's not always possible, but we try to in most cases. So L, for example, is basically always the length of a beam or column. You can type in a formula that uses the variable name L into any other input on ClearCalcs where the units work out, and we'll make use of that. So for example, I typed into a support location, 3L divided by 4. We'll read that as implicit multiplication of 3 times L and divided by 4. So we'll then put your support at 3/4 of the length of your beam. And I noted that every field can be used like this. So if you open up any field, you'll see a little formula reference listed next to it. That's what you can use to refer to this variable in other fields in ClearCalcs. So I could type n_C0 COM to refer to the number of members in the group or limit. And I could use that anywhere else in ClearCalcs. I say anywhere else, you can get a little funky here with creating circular references that will give you an error. It will tell you that there's a circular reference, but for the most part, yeah, you can use any variable anywhere else in any other input within a calculator. Now, when you're ready to submit, you may want to transfer a table to your AutoCAD drawing or to another summary document that you submit to your client or to the local council. That is what the file type Excel is when you go to export a project. So we don't let you export an entire calculation to Excel. Unlike our PDF, which does export the entire calculation, but our Excel export will give you a table of data. So it will list out every member in your project. It will list out the length of it, the maximum utilization, and the reactions. So that will allow you to import this in whatever columns are useful for you into AutoCAD or into anywhere else. So I also wanted to just briefly discuss some of the new features that we have created this year and give you a sneak peek on a couple of others that are incoming. So in Australia this year, we now support back-to-back and box sections for our cold form steel calculators. We removed the 1.5 meter limit on our sleeper retaining wall, validated some of our calculations to higher heights, so that we are confident that we are giving you accurate results to higher heights of sleeper retaining walls. We've added a lot of different timber sections that various of you have requested. If you ever are looking for a section or manufacturer or size that we don't currently have in our database, send us a message and we will get that added into our database. We also completely rewrote our steel member calculator. It simplified that down, so hopefully that will be more useful for you as well. And Power Up, please send us requests. Our best source for prioritizing what to do with our platform, what the new features are we should build, what the new sections are we should add, the new calculators we should create, is you. We want to hear from you. We do read and respond within one business day to every message we receive. And we track every request that you send through. We can never guarantee that your cool idea is something that we're actually going to build. We do have to depend upon what large numbers of our customers want, but we do track everything. We will let you know when we add a feature that you request. More requests means a higher priority for us. So please send us ideas. And then a sneak peek as well. We will be shortly integrating standards documents into the ClearCalcs platform. So you'll be able to read all of your AS standards directly in ClearCalcs. You'll be able to read both the full documents, so you can get rid of any other subscriptions or purchases that you are making of PDFs, and you read the full document within ClearCalcs. You'll also be able to view snippets of those calculators snippets of the standards documents relevant to each field within one of our calculators. So a screenshot of that is shown on the right here, where we opened up the lateral restraint type field, and there will be a button for the references that you'll be able to click that will open up that actual reference. So you will be able to read that actual reference with all the most recent amendments and revisions already integrated in place, and be able to read that and review it for yourself to understand exactly how the standard expects an input to be interpreted or an equation to be calculated or whatever. So you'll be able to do that within the ClearCalcs platform. That will include all of the NCC standards documents. So probably more than you need, but we think it will still be very cost effective for you to be able to make use of this. Now, before jumping into questions, I just wanted to give you a quick live demo of what some of this actually looks like in the ClearCalcs platform. So if I go to clearcalcs.com here, log in, I'll use my Google login for internally in ClearCalcs here. And I can show you around some of these features that I've talked about. So I talked about project details. You can use as much or as little of this as you want. If you input an address, we'll show you the address in satellite or street view from Google here. So you can keep track of what is currently there. You can select different building standards here. So this is where you can change the building standard for your entire project. If I go to add a new calculation, regardless of the building standard for the entire project, I can select any calculator from any other building standard that ClearCalcs offers and include these into my calculation for Australia as well. Mentioned performance-based design. One way to do that is to use another country's standards. If you use the US, I'd note that US calculations can be based on either ASD or LRFD. LRFD is most similar to what you're used to in Australia. It's load and resistance factor design. So if you use a US calculator, I suggest using the LRFD calculators in particular. In project defaults, again, any of this can be set and customized, and this will propagate through your project. If I want to change this wind class, I change that, and you may have noticed that instantly all of these calculators change to a gear icon to indicate that they are recalculating now with the different wind class. So this will automatically update any calculators that made use of this wind class from project defaults. So that's one way to deal with wind loads. Another way is to use our wind load calculator. And that is based on AS 1170.2. But you'll note here in the summary box, we give this AS 4055 wind class equivalent. So it's not strictly a one-to-one thing, but this will give you the same loads as AS 1170.2 if you select the equivalent wind class in our project defaults. So you can do the highly accurate calculation from 8 different directions based on 1170.2, and from that figure out the AS 4055 wind class that would govern that. So I mentioned preferred sections. I've already set some preferred sections in this project, so I can edit them here. I can add additional sections or delete sections from my list. But if I create a new project, then that box will look a little bit different. It will also let me copy from another project. So I mentioned we actually have internally just some projects that we allow people to copy from. I'm actually looking at a US calculator right now, but I could pull my preferred sections from this template project that we have for US imperial measurement testing. And just click on copy sections, and that will instantly pull the preferred sections from my other template project. You can also group calculations. So you group them initially by using our members schedule. We are working on figuring out a good user interface for allowing you to do this directly in the sidebar. But you can create a new group by going to the member schedule, clicking on add new group. So I could call this my first story beams, for example. And that's now a folder that's going to show up in my sidebar here. I could drag some of my existing projects, or some of my existing calculations into this, move them around between the different groups that I've created. I can open up those groups in the sidebar, and that'll be instantly reflected. You'll notice I also have this calculation upgrades that has shown up here. I'll show you a more interesting project for that. So the calculation upgrades, if there's a critical bug fix, will automatically take you to this screen. If there is no critical bug fix, then we will show you that there are upgrades, but we won't automatically take you to the screen. If you want to see what the changes are that have happened, click on changelog, and this will show you all of the changes that will have happened since your current version in your project. So this one that I clicked on, for example, we reorganized the one-page summary because occasionally it overflowed into more than one page. So we want one-page summary to actually be one page. We consider that a minor bug fix because it's just formatting and didn't always happen. But we will tell you exactly what happened there. So you can decide, oh, I don't really care about that. I can deselect it and then only upgrade those specific sheets that I want to actually upgrade. When you run this upgrade, it will take a minute to run, but once it completes, it will show you that screen I showed you before, where you can compare your results, and you can also revert the upgrade if you find that it did not do what you want it to do. So I can click on compare results, and it will give me a little gear icon while it's still calculating, but in just a moment, it will show me the previous utilization from before the upgrade and the new utilization that the project has been upgraded. So you can look at this and see, no actual change in the governing utilization happened. I'm happy with that, cool. Or I don't like that, I can go back and click revert upgrade. And as I mentioned, that's a very safe upgrade. We're actually just undeleting an old version, essentially, of your project internally. You can change materials for any of our calculations. So I'll go back to my Australian calculations to show this. But I could open up any of my sheets here, and I have a timber beam that I've designed here. That's a bit over capacity. Maybe I want to switch it to steel instead and see how steel works. They'll instantly switch over everything. They'll copy over my supports. It will copy over my loads. Don't need to reset those. It will keep the same preset, and you can make use of this to very quickly see if a different material might be better suited to your design. We know that a common usage of this also is you can duplicate your sheet and provide another option to your client. So if you duplicate and then change material, then I could give my client an option of, well, I could use a double laminate timber beam, or I could use a single smaller steel section. Two options. Maybe my building contractor can just figure out whichever he prefers, whichever's cheaper, whatever. Within our calculations, you can make use of any of the other fields. You can cross-reference and create formulas here. In many cases, we have actually put in formulas already for some of these. So maximum spacing of lateral restraints, we default that to the maximum span or the maximum cantilever within your beam. But you can edit these formulas as well. Maybe I don't care about the cantilever length. I could just delete that and only look at the maximum span. Maybe I want this always equal to the length of my beam, or to half of the length of my beam. I can edit these formulas and make use of common mathematics functions throughout any of these. This will also be fully unit aware. So if you just type 2000 in the beam length, it will assume additionally that the unit is what we've put on the right here, 2000 millimeters. But I could also type 4 feet here. You'll see the instant result of what 4 feet is in millimeters, 1,219, and the top of that input in this little black box. Or, and it will save it and then display it in the final results when I click out of it as well. Some of these are already based upon project defaults. So I know one of the places this is used is in the load magnitudes for wind. So if I open up wind, I can actually make use of seeing that these are already user formulas in here. These are already based on QS and CPT up, and that's calculated in the wind loads here. So you can verify that it's doing what you want. Pulling project defaults from wind class, and then edit what the CPT values are in here. And finally, I also mentioned that we allow you to export Excel format tables. So if I click on file type Excel and export this, then I'll get a table in Excel format that I can copy out to AutoCAD or any other program that I want to show this table of values in. So I think that covers everything I went through in the presentation, how it looks actually in the platform. At this point, I'm happy to take any questions you may have. So feel free to type those into the questions view or into the chat view, and can answer anything that you are curious about. I see Ahmed, you mentioned composite beam calculator. I assume composite, you're referring to steel beam and concrete slab. Definitely on our radar, definitely something we want to do in the not too distant future. We recently hired some more staff to our Australian engineering team, so hopefully we'll be able to get through some more of these requests for our Australian calculators in the near future. Hello again, Addie.
Hi, Brooks. Thanks for your presentation. So everyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to type in your questions on the chat, or if you raise your hand, I'm also more than willing to have you speak directly to Brooks. We can just unmute you. Or if you just want to share what kind of projects you're working on with ClearCalcs, we would love to hear that as well. And if any of the features that we discussed today are helpful to you.
Thanks very much, Paul. Yeah, I'm glad to see you having stayed with us for so long. And I hope that we can continue adding features that are of good value for you and keep ClearCalcs your #1 choice for engineering design. So Sebastian is asking for specific tools related to patio design, attached and or freestanding to a house. If you can send us actually more specific request for that, I'd be curious to what exactly you're looking for with that. Are you looking for an integrated design that would consider all of the beams and joists and columns at once? Or what would that look like to you? One of the things that we always want to do is not only hear your requests for features, but make sure we actually build something that is useful for you when we go do that. So Sebastian, please feel free to send us an email with a bit more detail of what you're looking for in a patio design. Is there a particular manufacturer that you make use of, for example? We want to make sure that we are building something that's useful for you.
Thanks.
A question from Danny about whether we'll go into 3D design in the future. So our ambitions for ClearCalcs are focused upon being the best design platform. So allowing you to do clear calculations to figure out the most efficient section for your structural design. We don't see inherent value in competing too directly with your ETABS or Strand 7. So we're never going to be doing the really advanced 3D FEA analysis. But we do plan on adding some more 3D related features to the platform, allowing you to do more biaxial loading on beams, keeping track of twist, and having more visualizations of how all of your beams and columns and other structural members are interconnected. So we want to make more use of that, but that said, we will never be providing a full 3D FEA solution for advanced analysis.
Doesn't look like we have any more questions, Brooks.
Well, if you have any other questions, do feel free to send them through using either our little help modal that's in the lower right of every screen in ClearCalcs, and send through using the ask option on here, or you can send an email to help@clearcalcs.com. As I mentioned, our customer support is fully staffed by our engineering team, so you will always get an engineer, one of the people who are actually developing these calculations, these calculators for you. So thank you very much for attending, and let us know if you have any other questions, suggestions, requests, whatever. Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone. Great to see you all.